Hermeneutic phenomenology, also known as Heideggerian or interpretive phenomenology, places being at the core of philosophy and research in the social sciences. Consciousness becomes less important. This is a move away from the Cartesian understanding of life. The study of phenomenology is not really the study of individuals, rather how particular phenomena manifest and appear in the life world. The life world is the world as it is lived and as it is experienced. The unit of analysis in phenomenology is the phenomenon, not the individual. Hermeneutics is a branch of philosophy that focuses on interpretation of texts, particularly the Bible, literature, and philosophical texts. It started as a theory of text interpretation, but then later broadened to questions of general interpretation. Hermeneutic phenomenologists such as Heidegger and Gadamer grafted interpretation to phenomenological study. For both Heidegger and Gadamer, language becomes a very important aspect of hermeneutic phenomenological inquiry. Grogan in 2003 explained that hermeneutic phenomenology was a radical ontological fusion of language and being. For Heidegger, language was not only the manifestation of a thing, but it actually was the thing itself. In hermeneutic phenomenological research, meanings are conceived in being and language. Phenomena are conceived as ways in which we find ourselves in the world, in love, or in hate, or in ecstasy. And for this reason, subjects and objects, or subjects and subjects, have an intersubjective relationship. The term intentionality is central to understanding phenomenology. Intentionality cannot be interpreted as meaning intent or to intend something. Instead, in phenomenology, it's got to be interpreted as meaning interconnectedness of something. It should be thought of as this web that connects human beings to their surroundings in meaningful ways, to other people, to other objects, whether we are conscious of it or not. In essence, phenomenology studies phenomenon in those intentional interconnected relationships that appear and manifest. It's these lines of interconnection that we study. From a hermeneutic perspective, manifestations of phenomenon come into being through intentional or interconnected relationships. These are always being interpreted. They're always in a constant state of interpretation, always swirling around, getting at this idea of interpretation, but always kind of in a constant flux, much like that picture that I put up for you. Therefore, you can't actually find the essential core meaning of a phenomenon, but you can find these plausible interpretations of the manifestations and appearances of intentionality. Now the question remains, how do we approach hermeneutic phenomenological research? Well, we'll turn to Van Manen and Vagle to answer these questions. A hermeneutic or interpretive approach to conducting phenomenological research constructs an interpretive description of some aspect of the life world or the world as it's lived. So while remaining aware of the actual life world experience is always going to be more complex than any explanations that we can provide for it, we'll still try to make these interpretations. Crafting this type of research is an active, interpretive, ongoing act that is never really final. There's an open quality to how phenomena are explored and described by the researcher. There's also quite a resistance within this methodological approach to a priori meanings, structures, frames, steps. As Van Manen explains, that devising a methodology that is too structured can actually stifle doing research in this tradition of hermeneutic phenomenology. This research shouldn't really be captured by hard data, observable measures, or anything of the sort. Rather, it should resolve to stand up for the uniqueness of life's phenomenon. We have to be prepared to be poetic, soulful, soft, sensitive, and subtle in order to understand and bring to life the meanings represented before us in this sort of research. Now, Max van Manen offers us 6 research activities that can be used to develop this type of phenomenological research. The first one is to commit deeply to a phenomenon. And this has to be a phenomenon that interests us. We have to think about what we really care about and what phenomenon we really want to learn more about. The second one, investigate the experience as it is lived. That means as it is actually being lived and not how it is being conceptualized. This is critical to understand the phenomenon in an everyday moment-to-moment lived experience is what we want to document as researchers. It's important to steer clear of any kind of conceptualizing of that phenomenon through models, frameworks, or even representations. Number 3, reflection on essential themes. Reflecting on essential themes which characterize the phenomenon, a phenomenologist will try to bring to light the meanings that generally evade us in everyday life. For this reason, phenomenologists love to study things that we assume we already know. In this way, we can bring to light phenomenological meanings that previously maybe evaded us and much of society. Number 4, describe phenomenon through writing. Describing phenomenon through writing and really rewriting and rewriting and rewriting. We write our way through phenomenon, and we do this to unearth the themes. Writing and thematicizing is deeply a part of the intricacies of language. And for a hermeneutic phenomenologist, there's no way to separate language and meaning. Thus, to do this sort of research, you have to do it within the analysis of language. However, when we write and analyze language, we still have to bracket our past knowledge off so that it's not influencing the phenomenon or our perception of the phenomenon. So we bracket off our knowledge, our judgments, our understanding, any biases that we might have so that we can approach the phenomenon with a fresh perspective. However, it's important to understand that we're not bracketing our interpretations, we're just bracketing our presuppositions of how one would interpret. Number 5, allow the phenomenon to teach you something. So we want to situate the phenomenon and ourselves in a teacher-learner role. We want to let the phenomenon be the teacher, and we want to learn as much as we can about the phenomenon through writing, through communicating themes, and in a way that others can also at some point learn from these texts that we're writing about and thematicizing. Number 6, think in terms of part to whole or parts to whole. Like other forms of phenomenology, hermeneutic phenomenology also stresses the importance of considering the parts to the whole when analyzing phenomenological research. This will save you some time from getting lost in the never-ending maze of language that often happens in hermeneutic phenomenological research when you're doing interpretive analysis. And that brings us to our references. The information in this presentation was primarily drawn from Vagle's Crafting Phenomenological Research, and I also drew on 2 other sources, van Manen's Phenomenology of Practice and Heidegger's Phenomenology of Spirit. So if you're interested in doing phenomenological research in the field of education, I definitely recommend van Manen's book and Vagle's book.